CGI animation be damned, the manliest and most metal of revenge stories has returned for a second season. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about Season 2 of Berserk. It has returned, and most importantly, it does not skip a freaking beat. They immediately pick up from the end of the last season. Griffith has been reborn. Zodd has appeared out of nowhere in his massive demonic form, and Guts and Casca give chase to have a big bloody rematch. What's most exciting is that the second season actually returns with 2 whole episodes, which together, I honestly think, are pretty damn solid. Separate, I think they are a little weaker, with episode 13 being, I think, the more entertaining of the 2. That being said, both episodes are very different from one another. The first episode is essentially just a big action one, where we get to see Guts going up against Zodd. The second episode, however, is dedicated to both Farnese and Serpico and getting into their backstories a little bit, as well as being introduced to a lot of the funny characters from the series, such as Puck and Isidro. So let's just talk about some of the highlights. Episode 13 is pretty awesome. It's Guts versus Zodd on a giant snow top covered with swords. It's a really fantastic setting for a super brutal duel, and is honestly one of the coolest action scenes from the entire series. I'm not sure if the manga is being translated perfectly into anime form, but it does look pretty damn cool while it's doing it. That and the fact that Zodd himself, just because he is a monster, he actually fights just like one as well. He is so incredibly destructive, and he manages to overpower Guts through most of the battle. That is until this fantastic sequence where Guts actually takes this random sword which is embedded in the ground and then kicks it up right into his freaking stomach, which causes him to transform into his giant apostle demonic form, which still manages to look really awesome. It's one of the best transformation sequences that I've seen from Zodd in any of the Berserk animes, period. And it's at this point that he basically just runs over Guts like a friggin' mad bull, sending him flying into cliffs, constantly getting him destroyed with his massive horn, deflecting all of his big sword swings. It's pretty clear at this point that while Guts is incredibly powerful, he still isn't quite ready to take on apostles of this level quite yet. That and the fact that Zodd himself is so incredibly blindly devoted to Griffith. And I can't talk about the episode without speaking of Griffith. I mean, it's the return of the biggest villain from the series. Such a charismatic character. And what I love most about it is that his rebirth is not actually a perfect thing. As you remember, it was due to the fact that he has this vessel which was created by that egg-shaped apostle, which also swallowed that weird, creepy infant. And that's sort of causing him to have these second thoughts, where, in a way, that infant is sort of acting as his inner conscience, and letting him know that, no, Griffith, what you're doing is incredibly fucked up, and you should feel bad about it. There's a lot of scenes in the episode where Griffith is watching the battle between Guts and Zodd, and he actually clutches his heart, and he's actually thinking, could the actual infant be doing this to me? Should I really be doing this? Who cares? I'm Griffith and I'm freaking awesome. He definitely manages to chew the scenery in just about every scene that he's in, and it's great to finally have some dialogue with him, especially with Guts as well. The scene gets even better when Casca decides to show up, and this scene honestly sent just a massive shiver down my spine. And that's when Griffith actually manages to get right next to Casca, and he actually embraces her for a second, and he takes his white cape and he drapes it around her, and this is such a different image than the version of Griffith that we saw before, where he was this dark, super evil-looking angel character, and now he's incredibly angelic, and the way that a lot of people used to view him when he was the original leader of the Band of the Hawk. It's made even more disturbing by the fact when you realize what he's actually done to Casca in the past, such as actually raping her in front of Guts, that it just makes the scene all the more intense. And even Casca herself, despite the fact that she is brain dead, realizes that something's not right here. I don't like what's going on, and this actually causes Griffith to leave. He might even have been disturbed by seeing this, and this might have something to do with the infant which is inside of him, which is sort of pushing him away from being super violent or even trying to get close to Casca. It's a pretty intriguing scene, and unfortunately he does have to fly away. And that's basically that episode right there, which is just a really big confrontation between Guts and Griffith. But there's still a little bit of teasing in the episode as well, such as the Kushan Empire. We go back to the character of Silat and his 4 bodyguards, the Tapasa, who are so damn awesome in this episode. Dare I say it, even cooler than the scenes with Guts and Zodd. What I love about this scene, of course, is that it's just so different different from the Guts and Zodd scene, which is all white and pristine. Then we immediately go back to this big medieval battle, which is really intense. If there's one thing that the series is still continuing to do right, it's carrying the macabre and gory nature of the Berserk manga series and putting it on the screen and being very unapologetic about it. This battle that's going on is just nuts. People being burned alive, having arrows shoved into their freaking eyeballs, and not to mention the Tapasa themselves, the bodyguards of Psylocke, who managed to actually take out these soldiers in just one of the most violent fashions that I've ever seen. And they're doing it with their bare hands and doing it with good style, and most importantly, they're not using the 2D animation when they're doing this, and I honestly think it works to a much better effect. The CG animation, which was arguably, I think, the most contentious thing about the first season of Berserk, is back in these couple of episodes right here, and it's still just as distracting as ever. Hell, I think the Muppets are more convincing than sometimes these characters. Sometimes they just look so brain dead and lifeless that it can take me out of this situation, and that makes me appreciate those 2D moments all the bit more. The good news is they are getting a little bit better at it, and they've even made the characters look a little better. Like Guts himself, his face is now not super elongated, it's much more chiseled the way that it actually looks in the manga version. It's starting to look a little closer to the source material. That being said, it's still not bad looking, and all the stuff with Psylocke and everything, that's basically just like a big tease for stuff that's going to be happening later on in the arc, as well as the arrival of Griffith, which completely freaks out Psylocke because he knows this guy appeared from out of nowhere in this giant demonic freaking ceremony riding on a giant gargoyle monster. Something's not right about him, and I love where this is going, and for fans of the manga series, they know where this part of the story is going to be headed, and there's even some hints to that in the brand new intro, which I'll talk a little bit about later. Really, that first episode, though, is just tension-filled. You could actually cut it with a knife, just feeling the seething rage from Guts when he actually sees Griffith. The fact that he actually sees Rickert trying to talk to him just makes him even more angry, because Rickert himself has no idea what Griffith actually did, that he basically fed his entire organization to a giant orgy of demons just so that he could attain some sort of weird, ridiculous, godlike power. It's at this moment that Rickert himself even realizes, wow, I had no fucking clue. There's no going back now, and he himself even wants to go with Guts, but Guts isn't going to allow that to happen. The first episode is a great way to get things back on track. The second episode sort of starts to pump the brakes a little bit. This is where we start to learn a little bit more about the past of Serpico, which he only brought up a little bit in the first season. We get to learn that apparently he is the illegitimate son of Farnace's father, and he was brought into the fold because of Farnace herself, who, man, she is just one crazy bitch. I mean, it was obvious in the first season, but like right here it completely solidifies why she is the way she is, the way her family life is, the fact that her mother is nowhere to be seen, the fact that her father is constantly busy and doesn't even really give her the time of day, the fact that she's incredibly blindly devoted to her faith, and some of the facial expressions that she gives in this episode are frankly just plain disturbing. The ones when she looks like she's just completely lifeless, the ones where her eyes don't even move or shake or blink even once. It really does a great job of illustrating how tumultuous her family life has been, that and the fact that she's sort of using Serpico as sort of like this surrogate brother. Despite the fact that she does have other family members, she considers Serpico to be something a little bit more, which she doesn't even realize that it is her brother. And it gets even darker because we know that Serpico is the one who actually burned his mother at the stake, and we get to see those events actually unfold in this episode, which frankly is just plain heartbreaking. It's really damn sad, and it does a great job of building up these characters, but it does slow the entire storytelling down to like a snail's pace. I will say though that the series is finally starting to do some good characterization. And thank God there was a huge juxtaposition at the end of the episode with the reintroduction of characters like Puck and Isidro. Isidro in particular, who honestly still feels kind of out of place in the series. He does in the manga version, he does in the anime version as well, but a character like him is so important to sort of cut through all of this intense violence. And it's perfect because that whole episode is just about all of this fucked up, disturbing shit going on. Rape, murder, monsters, and then Isidro pops up with his ridiculous expressions, and it brings me back to life while watching the episode. That and the fact that he's also joined by Farnace and Serpico just shows that Guts is getting ready to build some sort of brand new Band of the Hawk. He might not call them that, but he sort of considers them his new family. There's also some teasing to that with another new character who goes by the name of Shirka, and Shirka is going to be a very important character, and yes, I'm probably mispronouncing that name, but I don't care. She's basically the little witch character that you see, who's also doing some reconnaissance when Griffith comes into town, and she's going to be very important. She plays a lot of important roles in the series, and she's in the intro, as well as a lot of other cool things in the intro, which, let's just talk about it right now. The Berserker armor is in the intro, and it looks awesome, but we just barely get any opportunity to really see it in action. But it is reassuring the fans and the viewers that it is going to be popping up in the series. This is basically Guts' Super Saiyan, and it's going to be awesome, so let's just wait for that. We also get some glimpses of a ton of new characters who are going to be joining Griffith's brand new Band of the Hawk. For fans of the manga series, they're going to be very excited to see them, and I was kind of hoping that in the second episode we would get to see the first brand new member who's going to be joining, and they are not going to disappoint. They're all so freaking awesome. They have great character designs and their very own quirks. Very much like Zodd, they appear human on the outside, but they do manage to go through some really crazy transformations, so I can't wait to see that in action. So, what's the rundown on both of these episodes of Berserk? What more can I say? Berserk is back, and if you didn't like the first season, you're probably not going to like this one right here. The animation style has not changed one bit. I do think that's kind of messed up. I really wish that they would have listened to the fan base a little bit more. I mean, I'm on board because I'm a Berserk fan, and if I don't like it, it's really no skin off my back, because I can always just read the Berserk manga series, which I highly recommend to people, especially for those who are only watching the anime and have never looked at the manga version. This is one of those few instances where I just think the manga just can't be eclipsed, mostly just due to the amazing artwork and the fact that the pacing is frankly just a lot better. And there's a couple of arcs that they haven't even animated for this series, so you'll get to actually see those in manga form. Though, I still think they are still managing to carry the spirit of the Berserk series. There are a few moments, though, that, like I said, just take me out of it, and most of those are the CG animation sequences and some of the music choices. There's this one that I saw in episode 13 where I swear to God it's jazz music playing, which just does not fit into this type of story whatsoever. We need more like monks chanting, some deep, dark-sounding music. Hell, I'll even take back the metal music that we got from the very first season. When that jazz started playing, I thought it just looked weird. But there are some moments where it just really goes into some great atmospheric territory and doesn't rely entirely on its action, like the fact that Guts' soul is slowly being consumed by his hatred and demonic spirit, which takes the form of a hellhound with some glowing red eyes. There's this really just crazy scene where both him and Casca are camping out by a campfire, and that thing starts to come out and take over his mind, and he kills all of these demons which are trying to, like, get into their heads, and then he gets right on top of Casca, and in order to quiet her, he starts to kiss her, but then suddenly it starts to turn really violent, and he quite literally starts biting down on her breast, and it's really fucked up. It shows that he still not only has to conquer all of his enemies, but his inner turmoil as well, which is definitely one of the biggest things about Guts' character, and he's not going to be able to do it alone, despite the fact that that's what he wants to do. That's what's going to be so interesting about this upcoming arc, is Guts actually forming his brand new band, his brand new family, which are going to help him ultimately in his journey for extreme and bloody revenge. And frankly, I can't wait to see how it's going to unfold in the anime form. I will say, though, like I said, both of these episodes together were pretty good. Separately, they do have some issues. I'll go ahead and say that episode 13 for me was a solid 4 out of 5. Episode 14, on the other hand, I'm going to have to give that one a 3. There were just a lot of moments in that episode that I felt went by way too slow. The whole backstory with Farnese and Serpico, while it's something I do appreciate for characterization, I don't feel that we had to spend that much time in the episode with those characters. That and the fact that I think they got a little lazy with some of these flashback sequences, with a lot of it just being in, like, solid black with the backgrounds and everything. I wish they could have filled those out just a little bit more. And, of course, there were a few animation moments which just didn't really look all that right to me. Honestly, the Berserk anime series is okay at best, but I still want to see more of it, especially because we're finally starting to get into the interesting parts of the story. The intro completely lets you know that's going to be a thing with the Berserker armor, that great scene where Guts and his group are fighting against these group of trolls and just going up against them, and you just get to see the giant sword swings and the giant explosions of blood. That's the type of stuff that I expect to see from Berserk, and honestly, I hope they're going to listen to the fans a little bit more as we get closer to the end of this season. And I'm interested to see if this is going to be like the season that sort of clinches it for Berserk. If this is going to be the final one, if the ratings just completely tank, are they going to be done after this? Are we going to get a real solid conclusion to the series? Or are we just going to expect like a 12-episode season a year, which honestly I don't have too much of a problem with. And I like the fact that the censoring seems to be going down just a little bit more, mostly just censoring the nudity type stuff. This is still an incredibly intense, violent show, which you should definitely have a little bit of viewer discretion before you watch it. They even put a warning before the episodes now, which I think is appropriate considering some of the shit that you see in these episodes. So, pretty good thing that Berserk is back. I'm still holding my breath a little bit. I just want to see what they're going to do for the rest of this story. There is a long way to go. They're still technically at like the halfway point of the Berserk series, so there's a lot of things they could do right, but there's also a lot of things they could do wrong. For the premiere itself, like altogether, I'm going to give it a solid 3 out of 5. Just a good, fun, average return to Berserk, which luckily doesn't spend too much time in the recapville and gets right to the action. So check it out, Berserk fans. These episodes were pretty good and totally worth your time. But I want to hear from you guys. Did any of you watch the first 2 episodes of Season 2 of Berserk? Are you deciding to jump ship after the first season? Are you going to decide to stay on board? What do you think of the animation style? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you have any favorite scenes from these episodes? And what do you hope to see from the next season of Berserk? Please tell me in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Berserk and anime related. Make sure to leave me a comment. I'd love to talk with you guys about these week's episodes. And of course, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. You didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I will see you guys next time. And as always, stay dandy, baby.